Welcome back to Kdramas Decoded, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode of your favorite K-drama. Episode 11 of The Husband takes a darker turn as Taeju finally begins to understand who has been manipulating everyone from behind the scenes. What initially looked like a complicated chain of betrayals slowly becomes much clearer. Kyung has been pulling the strings, using Manhui, Myunghui, Dr. Ha, and even Jeong-ae to protect his own interests. And now, Taeju is ready to fight back. The episode begins with Taeju leaving to meet Dong-chan. At the same time, Manhui is struggling with a decision that could completely change the situation. He has the opportunity to kill Kyung, but he hesitates. The reason is Jeong-ae. Her condition is still critical, and the doctor makes it clear that Kyung is currently the only person capable of protecting her within the hospital and keeping her connected to the clinical trial. Manhui may hate Kyung, but he cannot risk losing the only chance his wife has at treatment. So once again, Jeong-ae's illness becomes the weapon everyone uses to control Manhui. But while Manhui is trapped by his circumstances, Taeju is beginning to see the bigger picture. When Dong-chan meets Taeju, he finally confesses something extremely important. Kyung was the person who originally came up with the idea of using fetal stem cells for the clinical trial. For Taeju, this revelation doesn't come completely out of nowhere. He has already been connecting the dots. The strange decisions surrounding the trial, the people being manipulated, the attempts on his life, and the way different characters always seem to benefit Kyung have all started pointing in the same direction. Kyung is the real enemy. But Taeju knows that simply accusing him won't be enough. Kyung has protected himself carefully, making sure that other people take responsibility for his crimes while he stays in the background. So Taeju and Dong-chan decide to play along. Dong-chan will pretend that he knows nothing and continue behaving normally around Kyung. Meanwhile, they will quietly work on a plan to expose him and eventually bring him to justice. The episode then uses a series of flashbacks to reveal just how much of the current situation was orchestrated by Kyung. We learned that Kyung was directly involved in the plan to eliminate Taeju. Rather than confronting Taeju himself, he used other people as pawns. Manhui and his wife were particularly useful because they were desperate. Their entire focus was on Jeong-ae's survival, making them vulnerable to anyone who could promise them a solution. Myunghui played an important role in manipulating them. She convinced the couple that Taeju was partly responsible for Jeong-ae being unable to receive surgery. By presenting Taeju as an obstacle standing between Jeong-ae and her treatment, she helped redirect Manhui's anger toward him. And this is what makes Kyung's plan so effective. He doesn't need Manhui to blindly follow orders. He simply needs Manhui to believe that his actions are necessary to save his wife. Eventually, however, things spiral out of control. Manhui decides to take matters further by kidnapping Si-yeon. The kidnapping becomes one of the major turning points in the entire situation. And on the day Si-yeon is rescued, another important detail comes to light. Kyung is the person who steals the money from Taeju's car. Rather than being directly involved in every part of the original scheme, Kyung waits for opportunities and takes advantage of the chaos created by other people. He then discovers another potential pawn in Dr. Ha. Dr. Ha is struggling with debt, which gives Kyung exactly the leverage he needs. He uses the doctor's financial problems to manipulate him into becoming involved in his plan. Dr. Ha is eventually tasked with killing Jeong-ae. But the plan fails. Dr. Ha doesn't manage to kill her, and that failure puts him in danger. Kyung has no intention of allowing someone who knows too much to remain alive. So he kills Dr. Ha himself. This is the moment when Myunghui finally understands what she has got herself involved in. Until then, she may have convinced herself that she was simply helping with a complicated plan or doing what was necessary. But Kyung's willingness to kill Dr. Ha makes the truth impossible to ignore. She has made a deal with someone far more dangerous than she realized. Terrified, Myunghui runs away. And now, in the present timeline, Taeju begins using that disappearance against Kyung. Dong Chan deliberately frustrates Kyung by preventing him from operating on the clinical trial patients. Instead, he announces that the trial will temporarily be put on hold until Tae-ju returns. For Kyung, this is a major problem. His control over the trial is beginning to slip. But Tae-ju isn't finished. Rather than immediately confronting Kyung, he starts attacking him psychologically. Tae-ju knows that Kyung is paranoid, so he gives him just enough information to make him wonder how much the police actually know. He hints that the police suspect Myung-hui was involved in Dr. Ha's death. More importantly, they are searching for her accomplice. That one statement is enough to put Kyung on edge. Tae-ju then asks the police to investigate CCTV footage covering the fire escape. It's a seemingly small detail, but for Kyung, it could be disastrous. If the footage connects him to the events surrounding Dr. Ha, his carefully constructed protection could start falling apart. Kyung becomes increasingly desperate. And instead of dealing with the problem rationally, he turns his attention toward Jeong-ae. He threatens her and pressures her to keep her end of their agreement. His biggest fear is that Jeong-ae may have told Tae-ju something. Because if she has, Kyung's entire plan could collapse. Meanwhile, Si-yeon confronts her father. She has been learning more about the clinical trial and about what happened on the day her daughter was injured. And she is deeply disappointed by what she discovers. Rather than allowing everything to remain hidden, Si-yeon insists that they need to acknowledge what happened and make amends. This confrontation is important because Si-yeon isn't simply angry about the past. She wants her father to take responsibility. She has already suffered because of everything that happened, and now she refuses to let the people around her continue pretending that none of it matters. Later, Tae-ju reassures Si-yeon that they will eventually be okay. He promises that he will find a way to get justice. But while Tae-ju is preparing his next move, Kyung is dealing with another problem. He meets with Man-hui and demands to know what happened to Myung-hui. Kyung is furious when Man-hui tells him that he let her go. From Kyung's perspective, Myung-hui is a loose end. She knows too much. If she talks, she could expose the entire operation. But Man-hui refuses to completely abandon his own position. He makes it clear that he will continue keeping his end of the deal as long as Jeong-ae remains safe. The two men eventually reach an uneasy agreement. Before anything else, Tae-ju has to be dealt with. And this is where Tae-ju makes a bold move of his own. At the hospital, he stages a break-in. But his real target isn't Kyung. It's Jeong-ae. Tae-ju takes her and hides her in one of the isolated sections of the hospital. His motivation is deeply personal. He wants Jeong-ae to experience the same fear that Si-yeon experienced when she was kidnapped. He's no longer willing to let everyone else control the situation while his family continues suffering. But this move immediately causes chaos. Man-hui assumes that Kyung is responsible for his wife's disappearance. Consumed by anger, he attacks Kyung. For a moment, it looks as though Kyung's own manipulation has finally turned against him. But eventually, Kyung begins to understand what has actually happened. He realizes that Tae-ju is behind Jeong-ae's disappearance. And once he understands that, Kyung makes his own decision. If he wants to survive, he needs to eliminate Tae-ju himself. At the same time, Man-hui eventually works out who really has his wife. He contacts Tae-ju and arranges a meeting. But instead of simply threatening Man-hui, Tae-ju offers him something unexpected. He agrees to perform the stem cell surgery on Jeong-ae. However, there is a condition. Man-hui must turn himself in. And he must also help bring Kyung down. Tae-ju is essentially giving Man-hui a choice. Save your wife, but finally take responsibility for what you've done. Or protect yourself and allow Jeong-ae to remain in danger. Man-hui is given time to make that decision. Unfortunately, there is still one major obstacle. Even though Tae-ju and the police are beginning to understand what Kyung has done, they don't have enough concrete evidence to build a case against him. Kyung has been extremely careful. He has made sure that other people are left holding the blame, while he remains several steps removed from the actual crimes. Another flashback reinforces this. We see Kayoung's original meeting with Man Hui and Jeong-ae at the hospital. And just like Myung-hui did before him, Kayoung manipulates their desperation. He tells them that Tae-ju is one of the biggest reasons the clinical trial cannot save Jeong-ae. Once again, Tae-ju is presented as the villain. It is the same strategy Kayoung has been using all along. Identify someone who is already vulnerable, give them someone to blame, and then offer yourself as the person who can supposedly solve their problem. The difference now is that Tae-ju knows exactly what Kayoung has been doing. And he is finally fighting back. Near the end of the episode, Man Hui contacts Tae-ju again. He asks him to meet that evening. Tae-ju arrives believing that Man Hui has finally made his decision and is ready to surrender. But instead, he gets a nasty surprise. Kayoung appears, and Man Hui and Kayoung work together against him. Before Tae-ju can properly react, the two men overpower him. He is quickly rendered unconscious. And that is where episode 11 ends. Tae-ju had spent the entire episode turning the tables, using psychological warfare to make Kayoung panic and attempting to force Man Hui into choosing justice over fear. But his biggest mistake may have been believing that Man Hui would choose to cooperate. Instead, Kayoung has managed to regain control at the worst possible moment. The episode, therefore, leaves us with a dangerous reversal. Tae-ju finally knows who the real enemy is. He knows Kayoung has been behind the manipulation, the murders, and the attempts to destroy his family. But knowing the truth and proving it are two completely different things. And now Tae-ju is unconscious in Kayoung's hands. With Jeong-ae still caught in the middle, Man Hui desperate to protect his wife, and Kayoung increasingly willing to kill anyone who threatens to expose him, the situation has never been more dangerous. The question now isn't whether Kayoung will try to silence Tae-ju. It's whether Tae-ju will survive long enough to expose him.